This is the Identity Shockwave podcast, where we explore the journey of self-discovery and the many layers of who we are as we ride this wave called life. 4 questions, real people, endless exploration. I'm your host, Lori Vaitzig. Hey, you made it! Welcome to the Identity Shockwave podcast, where we explore all things identity and self-discovery. My name is Lori, and I'm so stoked that you are here. And it's a new year. New beginnings, maybe some endings. But for me, I have a lot of new motivation. I'm looking forward to establishing new habits, like spending less time on social media and more time in nature. I live in Los Angeles, for crying out loud. Why am I not at the beach more? But you know what? I'm also not going to beat myself up over these things. The things I think I should be doing. I get to do them. I'm grateful to have these experiences. And you know what? I'm deserving of them. Which leads me to today's episode, and the theme I want to carry through into this new year. Confidence. The confidence knowing that you deserve all the things you aspire for, and that they are available to you. You just gotta know it and believe it. It's your truth. And our guest today is such a great example of that. But before we get into that, I have a little favor to ask. Another goal of mine this year is to grow this podcast and to reach new audiences. But I can't do that without your help. So please be sure to like, subscribe, comment on social media, leave me a review, give me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That really goes a long way, and I so appreciate your support. But back to today's episode, which, by the way, now I'm realizing that I forgot to ask our guests the same question that I always ask at the beginning and the end. I forgot to ask them at the end, so my apologies, but just wanted to clear that up. Anyways, today we talk to Jeremy Pion-Berlin. He's a filmmaker, and that is his truth. He's always known it. And his confidence is inspiring. He gives a different take on everything we've heard thus far on this podcast. And while a big motivator for doing this podcast was to show how we all struggle and we all relate to feeling like we don't belong or aren't worthy, we need people to inspire us with their confidence and convictions. And Jeremy is a great example of this. I hope you feel as invigorated about your own goals and dreams as I did after this conversation. But I'll let you decide. Cheers to this new year. Let's talk to Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to talk to you today and hear your unique take on identity.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's funny because we've traveled together, we've celebrated together, we've partied together. I still feel like I don't know you super well, so I'm just really excited to learn more about you today.
Yeah, I agree. It's like we know each other, but we don't know each other, kind of.
Yeah, and every time I see you, you're always so sweet. You always give us a big hug and a big warm welcome. So I know today that all of that enthusiasm and love you have, I'm sure, will just radiate throughout the podcast.
Well, thank you.
So I like to start this off by asking, how do you introduce yourself? Do you have an elevator pitch?
My name, I have a unique name. My name is Jeremy Pion-Berlin. My dad is Pion, my mom is Berlin. And they decided to hyphenate that name back in 1980 before it was kind of hip and cool. Mm-hmm. But growing up as a kid, I never really liked my name a lot because it's spelled Pion, and so people always thought it was like French. So it'd be Jeremy Pion-Berlin. And then since I'm Jewish, that joke is even a little stronger. But yeah, I'm a filmmaker and person, and I like to travel and I like people. And I like to talk to people and read books and skateboard and hang out with my friends and family.
I think you liking people is definitely evident, and especially when it comes to your work. So am I right by saying you're like a documentary filmmaker?
Yeah, I've done narrative as well, but that's not really my main focus currently right now because it's much harder to do narrative films. You need a lot more money and a lot more people, a lot more time. But yeah, currently I've been kind of working in documentary television. And my feature doc, Failure to Protect, has just came out on Amazon. So I'm excited about that. But I also made a narrative short film earlier this year, which was really fun, and hoping to finish that shortly. So that one was cool. That was good to get back in that. And I do write as well with my mutual friend Adam Lincoln Helt. So I guess unscripted pays the bills, is to put it frankly, and then the scripted work is still pushing on the sides, but that doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah, the industry is a tricky one to actually create what you want to create, but also sustain your life. So I understand that.
Yep,
I
for
want to I
sure.
want to talk a little bit more about your most recent work that you put out, Failure to Protect. Super, super powerful. And I think the themes of identity really do speak a lot with the themes of the film itself. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about the film through the lens of like identity, but I'll just explain what it is for people who don't know. It's essentially five parents, but three families who have all lost their kids to CPS, and the kids have been taken and put in foster care. It's really like a journey of like, what does it take from a parent's perspective to get your kids back after they've been taken away from you? And how do you sort of prove that you're not this monster that the system is painting you out to be? And along the journey, you go through this emotional journey with these parents and these families, but it was also important for me to provide context to these problems and not just have it just kind of so emotional. So it's kind of a balanced view of like, you get the emotional part with the family, then you learn from judges or social workers or civil rights advocates about like the laws and why the things are the way they are. So I really wanted to juxtapose sort of the bigger picture things alongside the emotional kind of personal storylines of it. But I guess in terms of like identity for the film, I just feel like there's this real big narrative in America around parenting, and it's always sort of existed of this judgment we all have of other parents, of how you were parented compared to how I was parented, and we kind of all think our way is the right way, right? I mean,
Sure.
that's kind of how we all are believed to think, and so I kind of wanted to sort of take down that narrative a little bit and humanize these people a bit. And I just felt like they didn't really have a voice in this system, the parents especially. And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to tell it from their perspective.
Yeah, and I think you did actually really strike a good balance because as much as you do feel for these parents, once you learn about, honestly, like the legality of everything is a little bit screwed up, very screwed up,
Mm-hmm.
rather. But some of the parents at points in the story, like, really frustrate you. There's some things, some
Yeah.
of the decisions that they've made I wouldn't have made myself. I don't think other parents I'm not a parent, but, like, I don't think other
Yeah.
people would have made, so, like, you get frustrated, but, like, "Why did you do that?" And then also but yeah, and it's the idea of going in front of a judge and proving yourself, proving your identity as a parent, that you're a good parent and that you can take care of your kids in this way. And it's the situations in the film are just really unfortunate and unfair, so I feel like everyone that watches it, whether you're a parent or not, can just have a broader view of our legal system and how fragile these things can be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, unless you've had like contact with it per se,
Mhm,
you really don't know anything about it. It's sort of like very analogous to the prison industrial complex,
mhm.
which now is kind of more mainstream, and more Americans would say that they vaguely understand that we put too many people in prison for too low of crimes and we have a problem. And that's sort of this system, but just people don't know about it because if you enter foster care, your odds of going to prison are very high. And
Mhm.
then you get out of prison, and you have a baby, and then that baby gets taken away from you, and then that baby goes to prison, and then the cycle continues, unfortunately. Yeah, I think they're kind of very all connected. I wanted to just like give people the information without sort of telling you what to think about the information, like try to let people come to their own conclusions was my goal.
Yeah, and how did you come upon these stories and the idea for this project?
Yeah, so my mom runs like a nonprofit called Parents Anonymous, and it essentially helps parents and families who get wrapped up in the child welfare system to navigate it. Because, like I said, like if you never dealt with it before, it's kind of like getting hit by a truck, pretty much. You have just no idea what you're in for. So they provide groups, and parents who have been through the system give other parents advice, and those kind of groups can be court ordered. So that's how I initially got interested in it, and then sort of dove deeper and deeper and met more and more people, and I got sucked in a little bit.
Yeah. I bet your mom has seen it all, huh?
Yeah, she has.
Oh,
She has.
wow. Wow. Yeah, I feel like you have to be a super compassionate person to be in those types of spaces. So I'm sure she's a wonderful woman. Um, so
Yes.
tell me a little bit more about how you got into filmmaking. No, I know you. I know that you've are very well traveled and you've worked on a ton of stuff, but like was there ever something that like clicked in you? Was it something from when you were young or like this is it. This is what I need to be doing?
The story I have is maybe more unique. I had a babysitter in first grade,
Mhm.
and his name was David Goldman, and I really looked up to David. And he would come over and would babysit me, and my dad had a whole old Hi8 camera when he put the little tape in, and we would make little movies together, and we'd make little stop action movies, and he'd pop out of the fridge, and or I had a little club in my backyard. I called it the Rad Club. And we would pull pranks on my friends who would come over, and we would just film stuff. And that was really cool. But I just always looked up to David. And then he became a skateboarder. So then I had to become a skateboarder because I looked up to him, and he was like the best skateboarder in town. And then so I started making skateboard videos. And then when I was 16, actually, I kind of decided I wanted to like try to make a movie. I went to a filmmaking camp at 16.
Nice.
It was supposed to be like in LA because I'm from SoCal, but it was like canceled. And so there was one in New York. And it was like the first time I ever like flew on a plane by myself. And I like stayed with my grandparents. I made like two short films that weekend. And I was just like, this is what I'm gonna do the rest of my life. This is it, you know?
That's so cool.
And yeah, kind of never had a normal job before. I did work in a smoothie shop for 2 weeks after high school, but I didn't get past the 2 week trial period because I'm not much of uh,
Not a
a
smooth,
customer service.
not a
I'm not
smoothie
a
guy.
customer service. No, not a smoothie guy. He wanted me to say aloha to everyone that came in the store, and I thought that was crazy.
Mm,
And I knew half the people in my hometown, so I wasn't saying aloha to people I know, you know.
yeah, there's a little appropriation going on there. Um,
Yeah, oh yeah, we can talk about
do
that.
two things. One, does the Rad Club still exist? Would you consider you and your buddies the Rad Club now?
Well, the building of the Rad Club has been taken down,
Aw.
unfortunately. It does not exist physically, but maybe in spirit, I guess we could say it exists still. But yeah, those friends, yeah, I don't really talk to at all. But actually, that guy, David, who was the one who I looked up to, he got me like my first job in the film industry, actually. When I was had to call it a break after sophomore year, and I was like an assistant editor for this company that was actually doing like trailers for Sony Picture Classic movies.
Mm.
And that was actually really cool. And Francis Ford Coppola hadn't made a movie in like 10 years, and he had just made this movie called Youth Without Youth, starring Tim Roth. It's like a weird indie, probably most people haven't heard of it, but it's a really cool film. And part of my job was just to like watch the behind the scenes footage of Francis Ford Coppola shot by his wife. And that was really informative and really cool,
That's
actually.
wild. Yeah, as a college student, that's really cool.
And I got to go on set on David Mamet made a movie called Red Belt. It's about jujitsu. It's super cool. And I got to go on set and watch that a little bit. So that was like, he actually kind of gave me my first job in the film industry too. So that was kind of a cool circle there.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like obviously from a very young age you knew what you wanted to do, but then throughout college you had all these experiences too that just kind of reinforced that in you and that like this is your path, this is your destiny, this is what you're going to do. Throughout this, although it seems like again this is very much ingrained in you, have you ever felt like a fraud or have you ever had imposter syndrome?
I don't really think so, to my knowledge. Maybe deep down or something like that. My mom, very kind of strong kind of personality, to say the least. CEO, a PhD type of woman, kind of like you deserve what you work for type of mentality, raised with. And my grandpa, her father, very kind of go-getter type, right? Big time lawyer in DC. And so it's weird when I get to a position of power, or like I get to the next stage. I always feel like, oh God, I should have been here a long time ago. And that might sound like cocky or egotistical, but that's just kind of how I feel. I can't help it. You know what I mean? Like so when in terms of filmmaking, like I'm always feeling, I don't feel that. I don't feel that kind of imposter syndrome at all. But I guess maybe possibly in other phases of life, maybe that in a way.
Sure.
But I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin, I think. And probably that's how I was raised, or, that's probably a lot of things in collaboration, but I don't really give a fuck what people think about me, to say the least. I remember this girl, she didn't want to date me anymore because I told her that. I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, oh, I guess you really don't want to. I guess we shouldn't date, because if that's what you think, if that's a problem for you, then I mean, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like, of course, I care what like my parents and my sister and my best friends think of me, or like my boss, obviously.
Sure.
But like generally, I just know like you can't control the way others behave, or the way others feel about you, so why waste your time worrying about that kind of stuff? Because even if you put your best foot forward, it's like, if they're not going to like you, they're not going to like you. So
Yeah.
I try not to worry about that too much.
That's a powerful mindset to have, and I constantly try to work on myself with that, with not caring, well, not caring what other people think, but knowing that you don't have the control to, influence what they're going to think. But also, what I love about your answer is that, I mean, that's awesome. Like, this is probably the first time that I've heard that from somebody, and it's super refreshing to hear, because what I get from that is that you've had a lot of support going up into this, and that you have this like innate knowing and confidence that like I'm supposed to be here. This is what I'm doing. This is what I was made to do. So to hear that, it's just like, it's really empowering actually for me. It's like, I should be doing this. Why shouldn't I be in this room? Why shouldn't I be here? So I really love hearing that. I don't think it's egotistical at all. It's you know yourself. I think you have a really good awareness of yourself, and that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I try to. I try to. I think also I talk about it out loud, so I try to like. It's sort of like I'm inceptioning myself, like to be about what you talk about. I think, or if
Yeah.
I'm going to do something, I always tell everyone I'm going to do it, and I don't tell everyone to be, because if I tell everybody, then I have to fucking do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because now I've told you. It's a little bit of manifestation, I think, to a degree. I think a little bit.
For sure.
You
Yeah.
know.
There's like sometimes you hear like, oh, don't tell everybody what you're going to do, like hold your cards close to your chest. I'm not that type of person though either. I like to share
Hmm.
because I like to feel that support and know that like, yeah, this is the right thing I should be doing. I'm very much about validation. So I'm always asking people and telling people, but also to your point, like speaking it into the universe, giving it life. Like I'm very much about that form of manifestation too. So I'm glad that you pick up on that also.
Yeah, yeah. I think it kind of gets me more excited. And yeah, I think it just kind of, if I talk about it, if I communicate with friends and family about it, then it's just more in my space of mental space to make sure I do that thing, or whatever it is that I'm like kind of running towards
Yeah.
at the given moment,
Yeah, for sure. Kind of like lights the fire under your ass. Like, make sure you get to that point. Well, I think we kind of like touched on this a little bit with as far as I would say your confidence and what you do. But what parts of your identity make you most proud, and which have you struggled with the most?
Yeah, so I guess I am proud of like my passionate sort of nature, and my, I don't know how to say it, but I just really like people, and I really can sit with people and like just like to connect with them. I just really like that. And I don't know if that's probably a combination of things, of just having like the curiosity in life, sort of. I think, I love talking to the old man at the bar at 2 a.m. about like philosophy or some shit, or
Yeah.
like or whoever, it's just kind of like, so I think that kind of go-getter stuff and the internal kind of, I have a pretty like baseline barometer that I kind of roll with. I'm not very like super high or super low. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like pretty even keeled, I guess.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously I get excited or I get sad like anybody else, but I would say I'm proud of that I can stay sort of calm in most situations. And I think I show the people that I love. So I think they know that. So I think that's good.
Yeah.
But I guess parts of me that I'm not so proud of. Sometimes I don't think before I speak. I'm sure plenty of people do that. I mean, I think when I was younger filmmaker, I definitely thought I knew so much more than I did, right? And I had definitely an ego and definitely too much of that instead of putting in the work and the listening in. So it's been a process trying to humble myself over the last 10, 15 years. I'm just trying to stay grounded, I think, and stay in the present instead of looking too far ahead or looking in the past of what you could have done, or oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that, or I should be doing this. And it's like someone told me, like, it is true, there's no shoulds in life. It's just, there's just, should isn't even a thing. It's just either you are that or you're not that, right? There's just,
Hmm.
that doesn't exist. So I think just kind of trying to take down my ego a little bit slowly, one thing at a time, is something I still try to do. It's difficult, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I think those, and I think sometimes I can come off a little abrasive towards people. So I try to work on that a little bit. But then part of me is also like, fuck, who cares? I mean,
Exactly.
that's what that's why like all my friends either like when I meet them, either we're like friends like that, like boom, like Mike Mo, for example. We were friends instantaneously, right? But then other people like Adam or Mike, we didn't like each other.
No way.
Didn't like each other. And then we eventually, realized, oh, we like each other, we're friends. So I think that kind of mentality can have like a more volatile effect.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then again, sometimes I like the volatile effect.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But yeah, I'd say those would be the positives and negatives.
Yeah, I relate to a lot of those, especially the abrasiveness of being an Italian New Yorker. And I've talked about this a lot, but like coming out here to Southern
Mhm.
California was like such a culture shock for me. I'm like, why is everyone talking so slow? Why are you walking so slow? We got places to go. And like my personality was a lot for people to take on. So I've said a lot. California has definitely softened me, but I
Mhm.
still got my hard ass part of me that I'm proud of. I'm proud of because, it's almost like a shield. Like it's like a layer of
Mhm.
protection for me.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a
I've,
huge part of my personality too, and I'm not ashamed of it. Not anymore. It's something that
mhm.
I felt like I always had to explain, but I'm not
People
ashamed
think
of
I'm
it.
from New York often,
I get that vibe
because
from you too.
well, my dad's from New York, so I
Ah,
guess, and my parents are East Coasters. They're just transplants to the West Coast.
well, that makes sense
So
then.
yeah. And yeah, I guess it's that, you know,
Yeah. It's
sort
funny.
of not giving a fuck a little bit.
Yeah,
you know.
totally. It's funny because everything you said about you, I can confirm and validate because the first time I met you was in Rosarito Beach. We went down with your group of friends.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was dating my now husband. And we were like 6 months in, maybe. It was like our first big trip together, and
Uh-huh.
my first time in Mexico. And you just you just so are unashamedly yourself, and you're just like kind of walking around and just like you have this like big shit-eating grin on your face, and like you really just had no filter. So like me also being a person that like sometimes I have to watch what I say, I kind of was just like I liked you, but I also was like, I don't. Does this guy like me? Is he scary? Like, I don't know. He's just like kind of like saying whatever the fuck he wants. I don't know if he can snap. Like, I don't know if he's gonna get mad or like whatever it was. But as that weekend went on, I just realized that you're just a fun guy and like you don't care. And I think that's what a lot of people do love about you is that you just are very much authentically yourself. And I think that's super important. And I feel like also you had mentioned to me previously that your travels too kind of really shaped who you are. And I know a little bit about that story, but maybe you can share that a little bit.
Yeah, that's funny. I can't believe that's the first time we met on that Mexico trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it was funny since we're talking about like identity and stuff. Like as a kid, I hated to travel. I
Hmm.
hated it. And my parents would always want to go places and I was just like a little baby about it. Because I wanted to stay home and skateboard with my friends and fucking fuck off. I didn't want to like go on some vacation. I think it was like the first real, I mean, I had been on some trips out of country with my family, but it was like I think when I was 20, I went to Australia for like a filmmaking thing through my school.
Hmm.
And that was a really great trip for me. And I kind of like got the little bit of the travel bug there. And then in college, my junior year, I studied abroad for a semester in Edinburgh, Scotland. And then I really got the travel bug there. And just kind of like meeting different people and seeing different ways of life was great. But really, it was when I graduated college, I moved to the Philippines, got an internship at a film studio out on an island called Cebu in the southern Philippines. And that was the really changed my life for sure. If I hadn't gone on that trip, I don't even know who I would be right now, honestly, or where I would be. It's the truth. And it's for a lot of factors, but I think going somewhere so different, going to Europe is great and all, and I love Europe, but it's the Western world. It's not technically that different from here,
Yeah.
but living kind of in Southeast Asia in a much poorer kind of country. And it was on a lot of levels, it was incredible. I think the people of the Philippines are just so amazing and generous and welcoming. And I think when you see people who have so little and are yet so happy and so content, it's really like inspiring. And like I hadn't seen that before. You just kind of see people here are just so like nothing's good enough,
Hmm.
everything. And that's kind of just like, oh God. When you realize that it was more of a culture shock to come from the Philippines back to America than the Philippines to America. I mean, hands down. That's where I met our mutual friend, Mike Mo, how I got introduced to you. And that's how I met all my best friends, really. And it was just kind of like a type of person that goes there and works for this company has to be a type of person and can't really be too rigid, has to kind of be very flexible. We worked for a billionaire person who's not the most mentally stable and not going to throw anybody under the bus. But obviously, I wouldn't have, thank God he built that studio because we all met there. But it kind of brought together this sort of ragtag sort of group of people from Europe and America and kind of all over. I went there in 2010. It was still feeling the effects of the 2008 crisis.
Mm.
So a lot of our like supervisors and mentors were actually pretty legitimate people in the film industry. So we were able to learn a lot. It was a good place to make mistakes. I made plenty of them out there. And the stakes were lower, right? Because we were just making stuff in the Philippines. And so, I mean, it was a good learning experience. And that was sort of where I got really, when I talked about getting humbled, there was a couple instances there where I was totally out of line. And those kind of things and kind of getting reprimanded were really kind of pivotal for me and like kind of growing up a bit more and like being more of an adult and learning how to be professional, like for real, how to be professional. Cause I was like 22 when I went out there and I had no idea how
Yeah.
to be a real professional.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, and then just the travels of going all around Southeast Asia and just experiencing those different places and cultures was just really great. And the whole thing shaped me. And it was just really cool because eventually, slowly, one by one, everyone from the Philippines moved to LA because we're all filmmakers. And now we have the Rad Club here. That's, our Rad Club. And we all hang out still all the time, 12 years later. So,
Yeah. I love
you know,
seeing a really bonded friend group like that that's just like been together for years and hasn't really grown apart. That's like really heartwarming to me. How long were you in the Philippines for?
I was there for a year and a half.
It's a long
Um,
time.
yeah.
You get really
It's
stuck.
interesting because I was mentioning like the culture shock. So I had like after the first 6 months, I came back for a little bit to visit family before I left. And I still remember the first night I came, it was like 6 months I'd been gone out of America. And I'm back in my hometown. I'm back at my local bar, the Press, back with like my childhood best friends. And we're talking to this guy. Something was off with him. I couldn't tell why I didn't like this guy. Something was off with this guy. And he's talking about some bullshit. I don't even know. And eventually he calls Obama the N word. And at the end of this conversation, he calls him the N word. And I was just like floored, right? I'm like, what the fuck? And literally, like, the culture shock hit me then. Like, it was like, I couldn't even talk to anybody else anymore. I'm like, why am I here? Why did I come back to this country? Like, what am I need to leave now. Like, this is ridiculous. And I don't know, like, it was just like this kind of like outer body experience. I remember this friend of mine, she's like, are you okay? Because she just looked at me from across the bar. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm upset.
Yeah. I mean, two things are regarding that. We just went to Italy this past spring for our honeymoon, and I was overhearing some tourists talking to some other Americans and them talking about how they're afraid to come here. And, you know, we live here, and to hear that people are afraid to come here because of all the gun violence and everything that we have here was just like super wild to me. But then also my only experience of Southeast Asia is going to Bali for Mike's wedding. That was that was the first time I've ever really been out of the country other than Mexico. So for me, that was a complete like, oh, wow, like, I wouldn't say culture shock. It was just like, oh my God, like an immersive cultural experience, because I never knew that people could live this way. And we had this driver, his name's Kadek. We're still friends on Facebook, and I tell everybody to go to him. He's a wonderful man. And I was asking him about his life and how you're saying earlier, how they can live so simply, but just have so much joy and be so happy. And at one point, we had stayed in this hotel in Canggu, and it was a brand new hotel, and the shower was overflowing, and like some other shit happened, and I got into his car and started complaining, and I was like, why am I complaining to this guy about this? Like, this is such first world problems, because I was asking him how he sleeps. He's like, oh, well, the whole family kind of just like sleeps on the floor in one room together. And I was like, what? And then I was like, what do you eat for your meals? He's like, oh, my wife will make one thing in the morning, and we'll kind of just eat that throughout the day. But he just had so much love in his heart and was so happy to be there. And another story I heard about him recently, a friend of mine who I met him through recommended him to her friend. And this guy, something happened where he had to go to the hospital, and Kadek stayed with him at the hospital overnight and translated to the doctors to help him. Like, the level of compassion and love for people that people of Southeast Asia have. I can't speak for all of them, but that's the general feeling I got. And yeah, to your experience coming back here and just hearing hate just so easily spewed like that, who would want to be here and experience that? It's terrible.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, the zeitgeist right now in America is really hard for me. It's really just hard to connect with the general zeitgeist going around. And it's about anything, literally about pick a fucking topic. I mean, I just, it's like, I don't even agree with the discussion around the topic. You know what I mean? And I always say when I'm traveling, if the white people go left, I go right. You know what I mean? It's simple. It's simple. Oh, the Americans like that place, go the fucking other way. Like, it's just like the most basic thing I do, but I just always never go where they go.
That's so, oh my God, I love that. I want to adopt that myself. But I mean, it's true. It's true. You'll have more of an authentic experience if you don't go to the westernized place. So I think you pretty much answered this already, but I'm going to ask it again.
Sure.
Was there ever a decision that you made that changed the trajectory of your life?
Well, I think it's the one to go to the Philippines, really.
That's what I figured.
Because it was funny, before I left, like, I had an internship possibility at Universal, and it was like the Philippines. The Philippines one was yes already, and I was waiting to hear back from the Universal one. And if I would have got this Universal one, which would have been so boring, oh my God, it would have been devastating. I would have taken it too, like an idiot, because I didn't know any better. That would have, God, be a sad person probably now. But, That was probably the biggest one, I would say. I guess maybe even that decision to just like know that I was going to be a filmmaker at a young age and just kind of commit to that, like from an early age. I guess that was a pretty big one for me. Like once I had the kind of realization, this is what I'm going to do, I never considered anything else, never have. You know what I mean? So those two would probably be the biggest kind of decisions that sort of put me on the trajectory that I am. But I think it's also a lot of little decisions you do over the course of your life that really kind of make you the person you are. And
Sure.
just like, I do think it is the little things, whether consciously or unconsciously, you're doing them that kind of set you on your path. But yeah, usually it's either something really positive or something really negative that
Yep.
kind of will shake me out of whatever haze I'm in at that time
Hmm.
and kind of move me in the direction I want to go.
Yeah. Have any of your projects influenced? Well, I mean, you pretty much just said that, but have any of your projects influenced like where you want to hyper focus on the type of work you want to put out there?
Well, there's a project right now that our friend Adam and I wrote. It's called Disinherit. It's a feature about an inheritance mediator. And that idea was like loosely inspired by my mom and her two sisters having a very nasty inheritance battle after my grandfather passed away.
Mm.
And the more I sort of talk to people about the idea and the thing, it's just I start realizing how many people have been affected by this kind of thing. And it's crazy. I feel like you can find 1 to 2 steps of separation. You'll find
Hmm.
someone who's had a really nasty thing, that ends up. But to me, it's really perplexing because I see it all the time where siblings end up like the second the parents are out of the picture, the siblings really don't have a relationship. And I more and more of my friends that I see it all the time and just like these relationships really fractured. And me and my little sister talk about that a lot, how we're not going to be like that. And I think talking about it, like you said, you talk about it, you kind of be about it a bit more. And so maybe it's because we're 9 years apart or whatever. It could be a lot of things. Or I never understood, no one ever taught me to be nice to my sister, not even my parents. I just knew, I knew like, yeah, she's my sister. Why would I not be nice to her?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, that seems like obvious to me, sort of. I never understood like being an asshole to your sibling.
Hmm.
But that's the one idea that we've been working with, and we've been looking into documentary versions of that. But I feel like it's an interesting idea because I was trying to analyze it a little bit more of like, well, why is it that the siblings don't get along once the parents die? Why is that so common? Right. And like my thought was that when the parents are alive, the parents, the brother, sister, or the brothers, they get in a fight, the parent comes in and they solve it.
Hmm.
They solve the issue. And so the kids never learn to like problem solve without the parents around per
Mm.
se.
Good point.
This is just my thought when thinking. And so when the parents are gone, it's just like they are kids, even though they're in their 40s and their 50s now. Like, but they never had to actually problem solve together without mom or dad mediating that problem essentially for them.
Yeah.
So
That'll be an interesting story for sure. Yeah, and it is such a shame when it comes down to material things and material wealth and how it can really just tear people apart. And especially with like marriages as well, people marrying into the family, things like that. It always makes things extra tricky. But I think the theme that I see going on with your work is what you mentioned. You love people and the human experience and real human
mhm.
stories. So I'm excited to see that one and see more of what you put out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely like I think people have shaped me. I think when you say that pivotal moment, it's like all the amazing people that I've met over the course of my life. All those moments are the moments that together kind of build something special for me. I think just having that open nature to people is like the possibilities are kind of endless in a lot of ways,
You're
you
doing
know.
it. You're doing it well. Uh,
I'll try. I
yeah.
try.
Well, thank you again so much for your time and for sharing yourself and for sharing these stories. We talked a little bit about your project earlier, but are there any projects from the past or currently that you want to plug, and where can we see your work?
Yeah, so my feature film Failure to Protect is on Amazon and it's on demand. So you can rent it or buy it and like it and rate it 5 out of 5 if you like. And then I'm currently producing a show for Discovery called Murder in the Heartland. It's a
Ooh.
true crime series. And my episode actually just aired last night. They're airing every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time. I don't know how that works, but they air at the same time.
Huh.
So that show, yeah, that's airing now. So the next 4 weeks episodes will be coming out. And then that will go on Max and Discovery Plus later.
Has it been around for a while? Because I feel like I've heard of that.
Yeah. This is the 6th season of the show. I've done the last 3. And I'm about to do my final one for the year and then travel somewhere, which I don't know where I'm going to go yet.
Ooh, any idea?
So I don't know. I was thinking Panama, maybe Nicaragua. We're going to New Orleans for New Year's Eve, actually.
That's going to be
come.
Was it you that said you've never been there before?
Never been to New Orleans.
Oh, man. Talk about culture. You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Yeah. Spicy food and jazz music and, it sounds great. So, yeah, those are the 2 things I would say that are out in the world right now. Some stuff in the past, but I did a 1-hour special called What Happened to Valentino Dixon that I was really proud of, and one called Murders at the Burger Joint. But the one, the Valentino Dixon one was about a guy who was falsely in prison for murder and then got out through his artwork.
Wow.
Which was a really inspirational kind of story. And he was really doing that one was one of those ones where you're like, man, I feel lucky to tell this guy's story. That's how I felt, like kind of directing that. So that, like, when you get those kind of ones, that's when you're like, this is why I do this work, because of these kind of people who just are so inspiring. But yeah, we'll see where the road of life takes me next.
I'm excited for it. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me, Laura. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Identity Shockwave podcast, hosted by me, Lori Vaitzig. Catch us next time for a new episode with a different guest that is sure to keep the conversation interesting. A big thank you to Let Me Crazy for letting us use their music. I'll catch you later.